Hello and welcome to Love Lighting Academy. My name is Bernie Erickson, and we're going to discuss legacy LED tubes. Someone in a office setting, school, retail, you replaced your existing fluorescent light bulbs with type A LED tubes. And these tubes work with an existing ballast, so there was no rewiring involved. They've now reached or are reaching their end of life. You're getting failures, and you're looking to decide what to do now, right? You've been perhaps replacing one by one, a few that have failed, but now they're starting to fail overall. And the sensible thing would be to group relamp. So what should you do? Let's explore your options. All right. Well, the type A failure dilemma, understanding why this prompts a decision for you to perhaps move to another technology. Um, why are your type A tubes failing? Well, your type A tubes may be reaching the end of life, or your ballasts may be reaching the end of life. They require a fluorescent ballast to operate. So while the LED tubes were rated for 50,000 hours, and you may be wondering, geez, I've only gotten about 25,000 hours and I keep having all these failures. Well, the 10 to 15-year-old ballast may now be reaching the end of their life, causing you to have a checkerboard look, of the lights and having a bunch out. Replacing, non-working LED tubes with another type A tube won't turn the light back on. New ballasts plus labor are pretty expensive. And if those ballasts are starting to reach end of life, and this is going to be an ongoing problem, it may make sense to make a different decision, right? We have a bunch of different choices, kind of this decision tree. We'll talk about the different paths in the road here of why you may want to, instead of just replacing the ballasts and lamps as they fail, move to a type B system or even a new fixture. So when ballasts are in your system, they consume a little bit of energy, right? They have losses of 2 to 4 watts per ballast. So it takes away some of the gains of LED efficiency. And the newer tubes may not work with those older ballasts, right? So as the lamps go out, you may be having challenges finding a tube that works with the ballast you have, precipitating you to have to replace the ballast as well. And now you're going up and down and you're getting a lot more electrician's time, particularly if you're outsourcing this maintenance. So when you reach the end of life for the system, for sure, this is, when I say reaching end of life for the system, when the bulbs are reaching their end of life, you may choose to do the maintenance to the ballasts while the lamps are all still operating. But as the lamps also start to fail, what can you do? Well, you could replace the tube and put a new ballast in that has a low cost for the tube, but a high cost for the ballast. And then the ballast continues to draw that extra energy and be a choke point or a failure point in the system, a second one as well. Type B system bypass, you bypass the ballast completely and run them on line voltage. And honestly, there's no more electrical cost to do this if you were replacing with new ballast. If you were just replacing tubes and you found tubes that would work with your old ballast, this type B does cost a bit more, but probably a less expensive alternative to one if you are replacing the ballast. Then they have a type A and B hybrid ballast. So this works with ballast today, but then if the ballast dies, you can rewire it to be a type B without having to put another ballast in, without having to take the tube out. And then your fourth option would be to put a kit inside the fixture, making it look like a more modern new fixture, giving you LED technology and dimming capability as well. So when we look at why the newer lamps and fixtures and retrofits are more desirable energy-wise. We see that a lot of these new ones are 135 or more lumens per watt. It's kind of like our miles per gallon designation in the lighting world, compared to the older ones, which were better than fluorescent, but not as good as these, maybe coming in at 95 to 100 lumen per watt. So you're able to perhaps squeeze out some more energy savings when you do this upgrade, getting 30% to 45% more electric reduction across the school district or an office building or an industrial park. And you might even be able to pick up some rebates, right? How do the utilities treat these second generation swaps? Well, it varies on the product. Simple LED tube swaps usually don't qualify for rebates unless you drop 4 watts or more. And this depends on the electric utility, right? And typically those rebates are given through their midstream program. Once you go to fixtures and controls, or where you put a trough or retrofit into this existing fixture, now you can pick up some good bucks, maybe between $15 and $50 when getting something that has network controls or occupancy sensors. So when we look at an end of life comparison, what might make sense, if you have type A's and you're going to just replace the lamp and put a new ballast, you're going to keep the ballast in there as a choke point. You're probably 32 to 36 watts. You're not going to get a rebate. So it's probably not a smart idea, right? The type B, removing the ballast and putting in a new tube, now you're 18 to 20 watts. You probably can get yourself a midstream rebate on the tubes, and it's probably your lowest out-of-pocket cost. A hybrid tube, it's going to cost a little more, and it maybe if you don't want to take the ballast out right now, it could be a way to transition into a type B tube. I don't know. I question whether or why you'd want to do that. Why not just bite the bullet right out? Or you could put a integrated kit, turn it into a basket-looking fixture, and give yourself a best quality, best looking fixture, and probably with the money you pick up on the rebate, be pretty far ahead. And this kind of shows you that 10-year cost of ownership. Well, a type A with a new ballast, boy, as you could see, $92,000, 10-year cost of ownership. That really doesn't make sense. A type B is going to come in almost half of that. And that's probably what we see most people doing, where they want to be most cost effective. But if you want to go with a retrofit and put a basket kit in with controls and get that nice rebate, the 10-year cost of ownership comes down even further, down to $38,000 for the 10 years. And you have a fixture that could dim and is going to look, like a more modern looking fixture in your ceiling. So kind of a roadmap. What would you do? Well, if you were doing something like this, you can map the age of your ballast, try to figure out how old are they, look at the labels. Usually they'll have, their date on them, and they can be a good predictor of when your failures are going to occur. A ballast is typically rated at 100,000 hours, rated life, so a mean failure, if you're 50, 60,000, 70,000 hours in, you're opening yourself up. Then you pick your technology. What are you going to go with? Submit your rebate application. Now, if you're going with the new fixtures, maybe it's a custom rebate or a prescriptive rebate. If you're just going to go with type B tubes, look for a midstream rebate where you could just buy the lamps discounted from the distributor. And now you do your demo. I always say you want to mock up a classroom, see how it's going to look, or mock up an office, depending upon what you're doing. And now you can do a rollout of your whole facility. Just a few credits for some of the pictures there. And thanks for joining us for this episode of Love Lighting Academy. We'll see you next time.